That night, Elena Cross sat shivering outside Port Authority. She'd lost everything just for daring to tell the truth about a child's death. But what she didn't know was that the mysterious man who just stopped in front of her was Damian Moretti, the most feared Mafia boss in Manhattan. And the child she'd tried to save? His niece. One freezing night. One act of mercy. One truth that would change two lives forever. If you want to see how a broken nurse and a ruthless kingpin turned tragedy into something the city could never forget, stay with me until the end. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Bye. The cold bit through Elena's coat like it had teeth. She sat on the concrete outside Port Authority, back pressed against the wall, knees pulled to her chest. Her hands were shoved deep in her pockets, but it didn't help. The wind coming off the Hudson cut right through the thin fabric of her scrubs, the same scrubs she'd been wearing for 36 hours straight. She'd stopped feeling her toes an hour ago. People walked past her like she was invisible. Commuters, tourists, couples holding hands. Nobody looked down. Nobody slowed. In a city of 8 million people, Elena had never felt more alone. Her phone was dead. Her bank account was frozen. Her apartment keys were in a bag she'd left behind when security escorted her out of the hospital. She had $17 in her wallet, a nursing license that was worth nothing now, and a name that had been dragged through every medical forum and news outlet in the tri-state area. Elena Cross, the nurse who ruined her own career over a lie. Except it wasn't a lie. She closed her eyes and saw the girl's face again. 14 years old, dark curls, wide brown eyes that had looked at Elena with so much trust right before the surgery. The girl's name was Sophia, and she died on the table because a surgeon had been drunk, because the attending had covered for him, and because the hospital had decided it was easier to bury the truth than admit fault. Elena had reported it. She'd gone to her supervisor, then to the medical board, then to the press when no one would listen. She'd done everything right, and they destroyed her for it. The hospital called her unstable. They said she'd falsified records. They said she had a vendetta against the surgeon. Within a week, her license was suspended pending investigation. Her boyfriend left. Her landlord evicted her. Her family, her proud, image-obsessed family, told her she'd brought shame on their name and cut her off completely. Now she was here, homeless, freezing, too stubborn to crawl back to Connecticut and beg forgiveness for telling the truth. A pair of expensive shoes stopped in front of her. Elena didn't look up at first. She'd learned that lesson already. Eye contact invited conversation, and conversation usually ended with someone either preaching at her or asking for something she didn't have. But the shoes didn't move. "You're going to freeze to death out here." The voice was low, smooth, with an edge that suggested the speaker wasn't used to being ignored. Elena lifted her head slowly. The man standing over her was not what she expected. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, eyes so dark they looked black in the streetlight. He wore a long black coat that probably cost more than Elena used to make in a month, and everything about him screamed money and power. "I'm fine," Elena said. Her voice came out hoarse. "You're not fine." He tilted his head, studying her like she was a problem he was trying to solve. "How long have you been out here?" "Does it matter?" "It does if you die on my block." Elena almost laughed. "Your block?" Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe, or annoyance. "When's the last time you ate?" She didn't answer. Couldn't remember. The man crouched down so they were at eye level. Up close, he was even more intense. There was something predatory about the way he moved, something that made Elena's instincts scream that this man was dangerous, but she was too tired to care. "What's your name?" he asked. "Why?" "Because I'm trying to decide if I'm going to help you or keep walking." "Then keep walking." He studied her for a long moment. Then, without warning, he shrugged off his coat and held it out to her. Elena stared at it. "I don't need—" "Take the coat." "I said I don't—" "Take the damn coat before you pass out." His voice was firm now, not cruel, but leaving no room for argument. "You can hate me for it later if you want, but right now you're going to take it, get in my car, and let me get you somewhere warm." "I'm not getting in a car with a stranger." "Then you're stupider than you look." Elena's temper flared. "Excuse me? You heard me. It's 12 degrees out here. You've probably got early-stage hypothermia. You're sitting outside one of the busiest transit hubs in the city with no bag, no phone, and no coat. You're either running from something or you've got nowhere to go. Either way, you're out of options. He pushed the coat toward her again. So take the coat, get in the car, and stop being stubborn. I don't know you. No, you don't. He stood, still holding the coat. But I know what happens to women who freeze to death on the street because they're too proud to accept help. So you've got two choices. Come with me, get warm, get fed, and figure out your next move. Or stay here and see how long it takes before someone a lot worse than me notices you. Elena wanted to tell him to go to hell. She wanted to throw his expensive coat back in his face and prove she didn't need anyone's charity. But her body betrayed her. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely grip the fabric when she finally reached out and took it. The coat was still warm from his body. It smelled like cedar and something darker, leather, maybe, or smoke. Elena wrapped it around herself and hated how good it felt. The man nodded, satisfied. Can you stand? I think so. He offered his hand. Elena ignored it and pushed herself to her feet. Her legs wobbled, and for a second she thought she might collapse, but she steadied herself against the wall. Stubborn, the man muttered. Come on. He started walking toward the curb where a black Mercedes idled with its hazards on. Elena hesitated, every rational part of her brain screaming that this was a terrible idea. But the alternative was staying here, freezing, alone. She followed him. The driver, a thick-shouldered man with a scar across his temple, got out and opened the back door without a word. The man in the coat gestured for Elena to get in first. She slid into the back seat, and the warmth hit her like a drug. The leather seats were heated. Classical music played softly from the speakers. Everything about the car screamed wealth and control. The man got in beside her and closed the door. Drive. The driver nodded and pulled into traffic. Elena sat stiffly, clutching the coat around her shoulders. Where are we going? My place. That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be warm. He glanced at her. You allergic to anything? What? Food? Are you allergic to anything? No. Good. My chef makes a decent chicken soup. You'll eat that first. Elena stared at him. You have a chef? I have several. He leaned back in his seat, completely at ease. What's your name? She hesitated. Giving him her name felt dangerous, like handing over a piece of herself she couldn't get back. But he'd already seen her at her lowest. What difference did a name make? Elena. Elena, he repeated, like he was testing how it sounded. I'm Damien. She didn't offer her last name. He didn't ask. They drove in silence for a while. Elena watched the city slide past the window, lights and crowds and noise that felt a million miles away from where she was now. She should have been terrified. She should have demanded he let her out. But something about Damien didn't feel like a threat. It felt like power, yes, control, danger, absolutely. But not the kind of danger that wanted to hurt her, or maybe she was just too tired to care anymore. Why are you doing this? She asked finally. Damien didn't look at her. Does it matter? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment, then, I don't like seeing people suffer when I can do something about it. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight. The car pulled up in front of a sleek high-rise in Tribeca. Elena had walked past buildings like this 1,000 times, glass and steel towers where the doormen wore suits and the lobby looked like a 5-star hotel. The driver opened his door. Damien got out first, then waited for Elena. She climbed out slowly, still wrapped in his coat, and followed him through the lobby. The doorman nodded to Damien without speaking. The concierge didn't even look up. They took a private elevator to the penthouse. When the doors opened, Elena stepped into a space that didn't look real. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The furniture was modern and expensive, leather and dark wood and art that probably cost more than Elena's nursing degree. Everything was clean, sharp, controlled. Sit, Damien said, gesturing to the couch. Elena sat. He disappeared into another room, and she heard him speaking in low tones to someone. The chef, probably. A few minutes later, an older woman appeared in the doorway. She was small and elegant, with silver hair pulled into a bun and sharp eyes that took in everything at once. She wore a cashmere sweater and pearls, and when she saw Elena, her expression softened immediately. "Oh, sweetheart," the woman said, crossing the room. "Look at you." Elena tensed. "I'm fine. You're freezing, and you look half-starved." The woman sat down beside her and took Elena's hands in hers, rubbing them gently. "I'm Serafina, Damien's mother." "Elena," Serafina smiled. "It's nice to meet you, Elena. Are you hurt?" "No." "Good. Then let's get you warm and fed, and we'll figure out the rest later." Elena didn't know what to say. She'd expected judgment, maybe, or suspicion. But Serafina's kindness was immediate and overwhelming. Damien reappeared with a tray, soup, bread, and a glass of water. He set it on the coffee table in front of Elena without ceremony. "Eat," he said. Elena picked up the spoon. Her hands were still shaking, and she spilled a little on the first try, but the soup was warm and rich and exactly what her body needed. Serafina watched her with concern. "When's the last time you had a proper meal?" Elena didn't answer. "Days?" Serafina guessed. "Weeks?" "I'm fine." "You're not fine, sweetheart, but you will be." Serafina glanced at Damien. "She's staying here tonight." It wasn't a question. Damien nodded. "Already planned on it." "Good. I'll get the guest room ready." Serafina disappeared down the hall, leaving Elena alone with Damien. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city below. "Why is your mother here?" Elena asked. "She lives here, in the penthouse." "Yes." Elena frowned. "That's unusual. So is picking up strangers off the street. But here we are." "Fair point." She ate in silence, feeling strength return to her limbs with every bite. When she finished, she set the spoon down and looked at Damien. "Thank you," she said quietly. He turned from the window. "Don't thank me yet." "Why not?" "Because you don't know what you're walking into." "And what am I walking into?" Damien studied her for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and sat in the chair across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Let me guess," he said. "You did something that pissed off the wrong people. You told the truth when you should have kept your mouth shut. And now you're paying the price." Elena's chest tightened. "How do you—" "Because I recognize the look. You're not on the street because you're weak. You're there because you refuse to bend." He tilted his head. "Am I wrong?" She didn't answer. "Didn't think so." He leaned back. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here tonight. Tomorrow, you're going to tell me what happened, and then I'm going to decide if I'm going to help you or not." "I don't need your help." "Yeah, you do. I can take care of myself." Clearly, Elena's temper flared again. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." He stood. "Guest room's down the hall. Second door on the left. There's clothes in the closet that'll fit you. Bathroom's stocked. If you need anything, ask my mother. I'll be out for a few hours." "Where are you going?" "Work." "At midnight?" Damien smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I don't work normal hours." He left before she could ask anything else. Elena sat alone in the penthouse, surrounded by luxury and silence, and wondered what the hell she'd just gotten herself into. Serafina reappeared a few minutes later, holding a set of clean clothes, soft pajamas and a thick robe. "Come on, sweetheart," she said gently. "Let's get you settled." Elena followed her down the hall to a guest room that was bigger than her old apartment. The bed was enormous, piled with pillows and a duvet that looked like a cloud. The bathroom had a soaking tub and heated floors. "Take a bath," Serafina said. "I'll bring you some tea. You don't have to—" "I know I don't have to. I want to." Serafina squeezed her shoulder. "You're safe here, Elena. Whatever you're running from, it can't reach you in this house." Elena wanted to believe her, but she'd learned the hard way that nowhere was really safe. Still, she nodded. Serafina left, and Elena locked the bathroom door behind her. She ran the bath as hot as she could stand and sank into the water, letting the heat seep into her bones. For the first time in weeks, she let herself cry. Not because she was sad, not because she was scared, but because for one night, someone had seen her suffering and decided to do something about it. And she didn't know if that made Damien Moretti a saint or the most dangerous man she'd ever met. Damien didn't come back until dawn. Elena was still awake, curled up in the enormous bed, unable to sleep. She heard the elevator doors open, heard his footsteps in the hall, heard him stop outside her door. For a moment she thought he might knock, but he didn't. He just stood there for a few seconds, then moved on. Elena stared at the ceiling and wondered what she'd see in his eyes when the sun came up. Morning came too fast. Elena woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices in the kitchen. She pulled on the robe Serafina had left and padded out into the hallway. Damien was sitting at the kitchen island, dressed in a fresh suit, reading something on his phone. Serafina was at the stove making eggs. They both looked up when Elena appeared. "Morning," Serafina said warmly. "How did you sleep?" "Fine, thank you." Damien set his phone down. "Sit." Elena hesitated, then took the stool across from him. Serafina slid a plate in front of her. Scrambled eggs, toast, fruit. "Eat." Elena picked up her fork. "You don't have to keep feeding me." "Yes, I do. You're too thin." Serafina poured her a cup of coffee. "Cream? Sugar?" "Black is fine." Damien watched her over the rim of his own cup. "So, you going to tell me what happened, or do I have to guess?" Elena set her fork down. "Why do you care?" "Because I want to know if the people who hurt you are going to show up on my doorstep." "Fair point." Elena took a breath. "I was a nurse at Mercy General. 3 months ago, a girl came in for routine surgery. The surgeon was drunk. He made a mistake. She died." She met Damien's eyes. "I reported it. The hospital buried it. They suspended my license, froze my assets, and made sure no one would ever hire me again." Serafina's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, sweetheart." Damien's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes, something dark and sharp. "What was the girl's name?" he asked quietly. "Sophia," Elena said. "Sophia Moretti." The silence that followed was deafening. Serafina's face went pale. Damien went completely still, and Elena realized with growing horror exactly whose niece she'd tried to save. The coffee cup in Damien's hand didn't move. His face showed nothing, no shock, no grief, no rage, just a terrible, empty stillness that was somehow worse than any explosion would have been. Serafina made a sound like she'd been punched. Elena's throat closed. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who she was. She was a kid. She deserved someone to fight for her." Damien set the cup down slowly. His hand was steady. "Get out." "Damien, get out." Elena stood, her legs shaking. "I tried to save her. I did everything I could. I said get out. Listen to me." Damien's chair scraped back. He was on his feet, towering over her, and for the first time since she'd met him, Elena saw the violence he kept leashed beneath the surface. "You came into my home," he said, his voice low and lethal. "You ate my food. You slept under my roof. And the whole time you knew." "I didn't know. I didn't know she was your niece. I didn't know you were—" Elena's voice broke. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. I know that. Don't you think I know that?" Elena's own grief surged up, hot and bitter. "I see her face every night. I hear her voice. I was the one holding her hand when she died because her parents were still in the waiting room and the surgeon was too drunk to even realize what he'd done." Damien flinched. It was barely visible, just a tightening around his eyes. But Elena saw it. Serafina moved between them, her face wet with tears. "Damien, stop!" "Ma, stay out of this." "No." Serafina's voice was firm despite the shaking. "She tried to save Sophia. She's the one who tried to tell the truth. And look where that got her. Look where it got us." Serafina grabbed his arm. "We spent 2 years trying to find out what happened. 2 years of silence and lies and bribes. And this girl, this brave, stupid girl, she sacrificed everything to make sure people knew what they did to our Sophia." Damien pulled away. "I need air." He walked out of the kitchen. A moment later, the penthouse door slammed. Elena stood frozen, her entire body trembling. "I should go." "You're not going anywhere." Serafina wiped her eyes. "Sit down." "Mrs. Moretti." "Serafina." "And I said sit." Elena sat. She felt like she might throw up. Serafina poured herself a cup of coffee with shaking hands and sat across from Elena. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Sophia was my granddaughter," Serafina said finally. "My son Marco's only child. She was smart and funny, and she wanted to be a dancer. She had auditioned for Juilliard. She was going to hear back the week after her surgery. Elena's eyes burned. I know, she told me. She was so excited. The surgery was supposed to be simple, appendix removal, routine. Serafina's voice cracked. They told us there were complications, that her body just didn't respond, that sometimes these things happen. That's not what happened. I know. We knew something was wrong. Marco hired investigators. Damien used every contact he had. But the hospital closed ranks. Everyone who was in that operating room had the same story. No one would break. Elena swallowed hard. I tried. I went to my supervisor first. She told me to let it go. Said the surgeon was a good man, that he'd just had a bad day. When I pushed, she said I was making wild accusations, so I went to the medical board. And they said there was no evidence. The autopsy was clean. All the surgical notes were perfect. It was like the whole thing had been scrubbed. Elena's hands clenched into fists. So I went to the press. I gave them everything I had. My notes, my testimony, the timeline. I thought if I could just make enough noise, someone would listen. What happened? The hospital said I was lying. They said I had a personal grudge against the surgeon, that I'd been written up for emotional instability. They suspended my license pending investigation, and then they made sure I couldn't work anywhere else. Serafina reached across the table and took Elena's hand. You lost everything. Yeah. For a child you didn't even know. She was my patient. That's all that mattered. Serafina squeezed her hand. Damien needs time. She closed her eyes. Sophia's death nearly destroyed him. He and Marco were close. And when Sophia was born, Damien loved that little girl like she was his own. Losing her broke something in him. I understand if he wants me gone. He doesn't want you gone. He's just... Serafina paused. My son is not a good man, Elena. I love him, but I know what he is. He's done terrible things. He'll do worse before he's done. But Sophia was his light. She was the one pure thing in his life. And when she died, he spent 2 years trying to find who was responsible. Not for revenge, for truth. He needed to know that someone would be held accountable. Elena felt something shift in her chest. He was looking for me. Yes, he didn't know your name, didn't know what you looked like, but he knew someone at that hospital had tried to tell the truth, and he's been searching ever since. And now he's found me. Yes. Elena looked toward the door Damien had disappeared through. What happens now? I don't know. Serafina stood. But you're not leaving. Not yet. Give him time to think. He'll come around. And if he doesn't? Serafina's smile was sad. Then I'll deal with my son. But trust me, sweetheart, he'll come around. Elena wasn't so sure. She spent the rest of the morning in the guest room staring out the window at the city below. She could leave. Should leave. Damien knew who she was now. He knew she was the nurse who'd been there when his niece died. Whatever fragile kindness had brought her here last night was gone. But Serafina's words kept echoing in her head. He was looking for you. 2 years. Damien Moretti had spent 2 years trying to find the person who'd spoken up, not to punish them, to know someone had cared enough to fight. And now Elena was standing in his home, and he didn't know what to do with her. The door opened without a knock. Damien stood in the hallway, still wearing the same suit, but his tie was gone and his sleeves were rolled up. He looked exhausted. We need to talk, he said. Elena stood. Okay. He gestured for her to follow him. They walked through the penthouse to his office, a room she hadn't seen yet. Dark wood, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A massive desk sat in front of the windows, covered in papers and files. Damien closed the door behind them and leaned against it. I had you investigated, he said. Elena's stomach dropped. When? Last night, while you were sleeping. I made some calls. He crossed his arms. Elena Marie Cross, 29 years old, graduated from Columbia Nursing Program with honors, worked at Mercy General for 4 years. Excellent performance reviews. Well-liked by patients and staff. Until 3 months ago, when you filed a complaint against Dr. Richard Hoffman for gross negligence, resulting in the death of a minor. You did your homework. I always do. He moved to the desk and picked up a file. The hospital hit you hard, suspended your license, froze your bank accounts, had you evicted from your apartment. Your own family won't take your calls. You talk to my family? No, but I know people who know people. Your father's a lawyer, your mother's on the board of a nonprofit, 2 younger siblings, all very respectable, all very embarrassed by what you did. Elena's jaw tightened. They think I made it up. Did you? No. Damien studied her. The surgeon who operated on Sophia, Dr. Hoffman, he's still working. I know. He's got friends in high places, the chief of surgery, the hospital board, even some city officials. Damien set the file down. You went up against a system designed to protect people like him. You never had a chance. I had to try. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. The right thing to do got you homeless. I don't care. You should. Elena stepped forward. Why? So I could keep my job? Keep my apartment? Pretend I didn't watch a 14-year-old girl die because a surgeon was too drunk to hold a scalpel? Would that have made you respect me more? It would have kept you safe. I don't want to be safe. I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then, my brother Marco took Sophia's death hard. Really hard. He and his wife separated. He started drinking. Last I heard, he's somewhere upstate trying to put his life back together. And the whole time, I've been trying to get him answers, trying to find someone who would tell me what really happened that day. I can tell you what happened. I know you can. I've read your statement. I've read the hospital's response. I've read every document related to the case. He met her eyes. You're the only person who told the truth. Elena felt something loosen in her chest. So you believe me? Yeah, I believe you. Then why are you angry? Because I spent 2 years looking for you, and you just fell into my lap by accident. He shook his head. If I hadn't stopped last night, if I'd walked past you, you'd be dead by now. Or worse. And I never would have known that the person I'd been searching for was freezing to death 3 blocks from my building. Elena didn't know what to say. Damien moved to the window, hands in his pockets. You want justice for Sophia? Yes. Then stay. What? Stay here. Let me help you. Elena's pulse quickened. I don't understand. I have resources you don't. Money, connections, people who owe me favors. If you want to take down the people who destroyed your life and covered up my niece's death, you're going to need someone with power. He turned to face her. So stay, work with me, and we'll make them pay. You're talking about revenge. I'm talking about accountability. That's the same thing. Maybe. Does it matter? Elena thought about the surgeon who'd killed Sophia, about the hospital that had protected him, about the system that had crushed her for trying to do the right thing. No, she said quietly. I guess it doesn't. Damien nodded. Then we have an understanding. What do you want from me? Your testimony. Every detail you remember from that day. Names, conversations. Anything that can help me build a case. The hospital destroyed the evidence. Then we'll find new evidence. How? Damien smiled, and it was sharp. Leave that to me. Elena should have been scared, should have walked out right then. But instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Okay, she said. I'm in. The next few days passed in a strange blur. Elena stayed in the guest room. Serafina made sure she ate 3 meals a day and slowly started putting weight back on. Damien was in and out, meetings, phone calls, business Elena didn't ask about. But every evening, he'd come to the office and they'd sit across from each other while Elena walked him through everything she remembered about Sophia's surgery. It was painful. Every detail brought the memories back. The smell of the operating room, the sound of the monitors, the moment when Elena realized something was going wrong and no one was listening to her. Damien listened without interrupting. He took notes, he asked questions. And slowly, Elena began to see the man beneath the power. He was patient, focused. And when she talked about Sophia, about the girl's laugh, her dreams, the way she'd squeezed Elena's hand before going under, Damien's carefully controlled mask would crack just a little. She was scared, Elena said one night. The surgery was routine, but she was scared anyway. I told her I'd be there the whole time, that I wouldn't leave her. Did you keep that promise? Damien asked quietly. Yes. I was there when she died. I held her hand until the end. Damien looked away. Thank you. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry I couldn't save her. You tried. That's more than anyone else did. After that night, something shifted between them. Damien stopped treating her like a witness and started treating her like an ally. He'd ask her opinion on strategy. He'd tell her about the people he was investigating, the hospital board members, the chief of surgery, the lawyers who'd buried the case. He showed her a side of himself that Elena suspected most people never saw. He was ruthless, calculating, but he wasn't cruel. You're not what I expected, Elena said one evening. They were in the office again, files spread across the desk. Damien looked up from the document he was reading. What did you expect? I don't know, someone colder, I guess. More, she paused. Dangerous. I am dangerous. I know, but you're also... Elena struggled for the word. Human. Damien's mouth twitched. Don't spread that around. It's bad for my reputation. Elena laughed. It was the first time she'd laughed in months, and it felt strange. Damien watched her with something that might have been approval. You should do that more. What? Laugh. You've got a good laugh. Elena felt her cheeks warm. Thanks. He went back to his papers, and Elena tried to focus on her own work, but she found herself watching him instead. The way he moved, the way he thought, the way he cared about things he pretended not to care about. It was dangerous. Not because Damien was a threat, but because Elena was starting to forget that this arrangement was temporary, that once they got justice for Sofia, she'd have to leave. And she wasn't sure she wanted to anymore. Serafina noticed, of course. You're getting attached, she said one afternoon. Elena was helping her fold laundry, a strange domestic task that felt surreal given where she was. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Serafina smiled. You look at my son the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. Elena's hands stilled. He doesn't. He does, and you do, and it's dangerous. I know. Do you? Serafina set down the towel she was folding. Damien's world is violent. The people he deals with don't play by normal rules. If they find out you matter to him, they'll use you against him. I don't matter to him. We're just working together. You keep telling yourself that. Elena didn't know what to say. Serafina touched her arm gently. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to warn you. Because I like you, Elena, and I don't want to see you get hurt. I can take care of myself. I know you can, but that doesn't mean you should have to. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what Serafina had said, about the danger, about the way Damien looked at her. She got up and walked through the quiet penthouse. The city lights spilled through the windows, casting everything in silver. Damien was standing in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at Manhattan. Can't sleep? He asked without turning around. No. Me neither. Elena joined him at the window. What are you thinking about? The case. The people we're going up against, whether this is even possible. You think we'll lose? I think the system is designed to protect people like Dr. Hoffman, and taking him down means going to war with everyone who's kept him safe. Are you having second thoughts? Damien looked at her. Are you? No? Then neither am I. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Damien said, You know this is going to get messy, right? I know. And you're still willing to see it through? Yes. Why? Elena thought about Sofia, about the promise she'd made to a scared 14-year-old girl, about every patient she'd ever cared for who'd been failed by a system that valued reputation over truth. Because someone has to, she said simply. Damien studied her face. Then he held out his glass. Want some? Elena took it and sipped. The whiskey burned going down, but it felt good. We're going to win, Damien said. I don't care how long it takes or what it costs. We're going to make them pay for what they did to Sofia. And we're going to clear your name. You can't promise that. Watch me. Elena handed the glass back. Their fingers brushed, and she felt the jolt of it all the way through her body. Damien felt it too. She could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes darkened. This is a bad idea, he said quietly. What is? You know what? Elena's heart was pounding. Then why does it feel like the only good idea I've had in months? Because you're not thinking straight. You're vulnerable. I'm the person who saved you. You're confusing gratitude with stop. Elena stepped closer. I know the difference between gratitude and whatever this is, and I'm not confused. Elena, I see you, Damien, not the reputation, not the power. You. The man who spent 2 years trying to get justice for a little girl who wasn't even his daughter. The man who picked me up off the street because he couldn't stand watching someone suffer. That's who I see. Damien's control cracked, just for a second, but it was enough. You don't know what you're getting into, he said roughly. Then show me. He set the glass down. If we do this, there's no going back. I know. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things that would horrify you, and I'll do worse if it means protecting the people I care about. I'm not asking you to be good. I'm asking you to be honest. Damien reached out and cupped her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You're going to regret this. Maybe, but not tonight. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was raw and desperate and full of everything they'd both been holding back. Elena kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. This complicates things, Damien said. Yeah. We're in the middle of a war. I know. If anyone finds out, then we'll deal with it. Damien rested his forehead against hers. You're insane. Probably. He laughed. It was a low, rough sound that Elena felt in her bones. Come on, he said. You should get some sleep. What about you? I've got work to do. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to stay, but she could see the walls going back up, the controls sliding into place. So she nodded and headed back to her room. But when she looked back, Damien was watching her with an expression that made her chest ache. And Elena knew, without a doubt, that she was already in too deep. The next morning, everything changed. Elena woke to shouting. She scrambled out of bed and ran into the living room to find Damien on the phone, his face dark with fury. When? He snapped. How many? I don't care what it takes. Find them. He hung up and saw Elena. Get dressed. Now. What's wrong? Someone leaked your location. We've got eyes on the building. Elena's blood ran cold. Who? I don't know yet, but someone knows you're here and they're watching. Serafina appeared in the hallway, already dressed. Damien, we need to move her. I know, Ma. I'm working on it. What do you mean, move me? Elena asked. Damien grabbed his jacket. It means someone wants you gone, and if they know where you are, they'll come for you. Let them come. Elena, I'm not running, not again. This isn't about pride. This is about survival. Then let me fight. Damien stared at her. You have no idea what you're up against. Then teach me. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Thought he'd throw her over his shoulder and drag her out of the city, whether she wanted to go or not. But instead, he smiled. It was sharp and dangerous and full of promise. All right, he said, let's go to war. The war room, as Damien called it, was in the basement of a building Elena had never seen before. They'd left the penthouse through a service entrance, moved through 2 different cars, and ended up in a nondescript warehouse in Red Hook. The kind of place you'd drive past without looking twice. Inside was different. Banks of monitors lined one wall, showing security feeds from what looked like half the city. A long table dominated the center of the room, covered in maps, photos, and documents. 3 men were already there when they arrived, all of them big, all of them armed, all of them watching Elena like they weren't sure what to make of her. This is Marco, Vincent, and Luca, Damien said without preamble. They work for me. You can trust them. Elena nodded. The men nodded back, but their eyes stayed cautious. Damien moved to the table and spread out a set of photographs. These were taken this morning. 3 vehicles parked within visual range of my building. 2 sedans, 1 SUV. Plates are registered to shell companies. No one got out, but they've been sitting there for 4 hours. Hospital? Vincent asked. He was the oldest of the 3, with gray at his temples and a scar running down his neck. That's my guess. Someone at Mercy General knows Elena's alive and wants to make sure she stays quiet. Or they want leverage, Marco said. He looked like Damien, Same dark hair, same sharp features, and Elena realized with a jolt that this was Sophia's father. The brother Serafina had mentioned. He looked thinner than he should be, with shadows under his eyes that spoke of too much grief and not enough sleep. Damien glanced at him. You sure you want to be here? Yeah, I'm sure. All right. Damien turned back to the photos. We need to know who sent them. Vincent, I want background on every person in those vehicles. Luca, check the hospital's employee records. See who's connected to Dr. Hoffman or the board. Someone's coordinating this. What about the girl? Luca asked, jerking his chin at Elena. She stays with me. Boss, that's not... She stays with me, Damien repeated, and his voice left no room for argument. Luca shut up. Elena stepped forward. I can help. All four men looked at her. I worked at that hospital for 4 years, she continued. I know the staff. I know who's loyal to Hoffman, who's scared of him, and who might be willing to talk if pushed. You're a target, Marco said flatly. The second you show your face, then I won't show my face. But I can give you names. People who were in the OR that day. People who saw what happened and stayed quiet. She met Damien's eyes. You said you wanted my testimony. This is part of it. Damien studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, start writing. Elena spent the next 3 hours at that table writing down every name she could remember. Nurses, techs, anesthesiologists, residents, people who'd been in the room when Sophia died, people who'd been on shift that week, people who'd acted strange afterward. By the time she finished, her hand was cramping and she'd filled 6 pages. Damien read through them without comment. Then he handed the list to Vincent. Run these. I want to know who's vulnerable. Vulnerable how? Debts, affairs, addictions, anything we can use. Vincent took the list and disappeared. Marco moved to stand beside Elena. Up close, she could see the resemblance to Sophia, the same dark eyes, the same shape to his mouth. You were with her, he said quietly. When she died. Elena's throat tightened. Yes. Did she suffer? No, it was fast. She just went to sleep. It was a lie. Sophia had been terrified at the end, crying for her parents, squeezing Elena's hand so hard it left bruises. But Marco didn't need to know that. Some truths were too cruel to share. Marco nodded. Thank you for trying. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. You did more than anyone else. He turned to Damien. I want in on this. Whatever you're planning, I want to be there. No. Damien, I said no. You're too close to this. You'll get sloppy. She was my daughter. I know. That's why you're staying out of it. Marco's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he walked out, shoulders rigid with anger. Damien watched him go, his expression unreadable. He hates you right now, Elena said. He'll get over it. Will he? Eventually. Damien moved to the monitors. He's been drowning since Sophia died. If I let him get involved in this, he'll do something stupid and get himself killed. So yeah, he hates me, but at least he's alive. Elena joined him at the monitors. You're protecting him. I'm protecting what's left of my family. That includes me now, doesn't it? Damien looked at her. Yeah, it does. The admission hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to name. Luca came back with a laptop. Got something. They gathered around as he pulled up a personnel file. The photo showed a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and graying hair. Dr. Patricia Chen, Chief of Surgery at Mercy General. She's been covering for Hoffman for years, Luca said. 3 malpractice complaints, all buried, 2 settlements paid out quietly. And get this, she's got a kid at Princeton. Tuition's $60,000 a year and her salary doesn't come close to covering it. So someone's paying her to keep quiet, Damien said. Looks like it. Where's the money coming from? Still tracking that, but I found something else. Luca pulled up another file. 4 weeks ago, Dr. Chen made a withdrawal, $50,000 in cash. 2 days later, Elena's case got escalated to the state medical board. Elena felt cold. She paid them off. That'd be my guess. Damien's face was stone. Find out who else she's been paying, and find out who's paying her. On it. After Luca left, Damien turned to Elena. You all right? I don't know. I thought... She stopped. I thought it was just Hoffman. One bad surgeon who made a mistake and covered it up. But this is bigger than that. It always is. How do you do this? How do you look at this much corruption and not lose your mind? Who says I haven't? Damien's smile was bitter. I lost my mind a long time ago, Elena. I just got really good at pretending I didn't. They worked through the afternoon. Vincent came back with backgrounds on the hospital board, old money, political connections, the kind of people who thought they were untouchable. Marco reappeared eventually, calmer but still tense. And slowly, piece by piece, they started building a picture of exactly how deep the cover-up went. It was worse than Elena had thought. Dr. Hoffman wasn't just protected by the hospital. He had friends on the city council, a cousin who worked in the DA's office, a lawyer who'd successfully defended 3 other doctors accused of malpractice. The whole system was designed to shield him from consequences. We can't beat this, Elena said finally. Even with everything we've found, it's not enough. They'll bury it again. Not if we go public, Damien said. We tried that. It didn't work. You tried it. Alone. With no resources and no protection. Damien leaned back in his chair. But you're not alone anymore. What are you planning? A hearing, public, recorded, impossible to ignore. We get everyone who was in that operating room in one place and make them testify under oath. They'll never agree to that. They will if we give them no choice. Elena frowned. What does that mean? Damien's smile was sharp. It means we find leverage on every single person who helped cover up Sophia's death. And we make them understand that staying quiet is more dangerous than telling the truth. It took 2 more days to gather what they needed. Vincent tracked down a surgical resident who'd been in the OR with Sophia. The kid was 26, drowning in student debt, and terrified of losing his medical license. It took 3 hours and a promise of immunity, but he finally broke. He admitted that Hoffman had been drinking before the surgery, that he'd made a critical error, that Dr. Chen had ordered everyone to stay silent. Luca found the financial trail. Turned out Dr. Chen wasn't the only one being paid. 2 board members had received mysterious consulting fees. A hospital lawyer had taken a sudden vacation to the Maldives. The money came from a legal defense fund set up by Hoffman's family, old pharmaceutical money, the kind that could buy silence wholesale. And Marco, despite Damien's orders, did his own digging. He found Sophia's original autopsy report, the real one, before it had been scrubbed. It showed clear signs of surgical error, punctured artery, excessive bleeding, exactly what Elena had said in her statement. How did you get this? Damien asked when Marco showed him. I have my own contacts. Marco, don't, I'm not a child, Damien, and this is my daughter we're talking about. Damien looked at the report, then at his brother. Finally, he nodded. All right, good work. Marco's shoulders relaxed slightly. So what now? Now we force their hand. Elena watched the 2 brothers work together, and something in her chest loosened. This was what family looked like when it functioned. Messy, complicated, but ultimately united. She thought about her own family, the parents who'd cut her off, the siblings who'd stopped answering her calls. They'd chosen reputation over truth, and she'd paid the price. But maybe she'd found a different kind of family here. That night, Damien pulled her aside. We're moving tomorrow, he said. Setting up the hearing. It's going to get messy. I know. They'll come after you, harder than before. They'll dig up everything they can find and use it against you. Let them. Elena, I'm not backing down. Not now. She met his eyes. You asked me if I was sure. I am. Whatever it takes. Damien reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made Elena's breath catch. You're going to hate me before this is over, he said quietly. Why? Because I'm going to use you. Your testimony, your story, your pain. I'm going to put you in front of cameras and reporters and lawyers and make you relive the worst day of your life over and over until we get what we need. I know. And you're still willing? Yes. Why? Elena thought about Sophia, about the promise she'd made, about every patient she'd ever cared for. Because some things are worth the cost. Damien pulled her close. She went willingly, pressing her face against his chest, feeling his heartbeat under her cheek. I won't let them destroy you again, he murmured into her hair. You can't promise that. Watch me. They stood like that for a long moment. Then Damien pulled back, his hand still on her shoulders. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start fighting back. But Elena didn't get to rest. At 3 in the morning, the building's alarm went off. She jolted awake to flashing lights and a blaring siren. Damien was at her door seconds later, already dressed, gun in hand. Get up, now! Elena scrambled out of bed. What's happening? Someone's trying to get in. Her blood ran cold. The hospital? Don't know. Don't care. We're leaving. He grabbed her arm and pulled her into the hallway. Marco and Vincent were already there, both armed. Serafina appeared from another room, calm despite the chaos. The car's ready, Vincent said. Good. Get Ma out first. Damien, I'm not leaving without... Ma, go. Now. Serafina looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded. Vincent led her toward the back stairs. What about us? Elena asked. We're taking a different route. Marco moved to the monitors. 3 men, ground floor. They're bypassing the security system. Professional, Damien said. Not cops, not hospital security. Then who? Someone with resources. The lights went out. Elena's heart hammered. In the darkness, she could hear footsteps below them. Heavy boots, multiple sets. Damien's hand found hers. Stay close to me. Don't make a sound. They moved through the building like ghosts. Damien seemed to know every corner, every shadow. Marco covered their backs, his gun steady. Elena focused on breathing quietly, on not tripping, on not panicking. They reached a service door. Damien eased it open and checked outside. Clear. They slipped into the alley. The car was waiting, different from before, older, less conspicuous. Damien pushed Elena into the back seat and climbed in after her. Drive, he told Marco. They pulled out just as the building's front door burst open. 3 figures in tactical gear rushed inside. Elena looked back, her stomach churning. They were going to kill me. Yeah. How did they find us? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Marco drove fast but careful, weaving through the pre-dawn streets. They ended up at another safe house. This one in Queens, smaller and less comfortable, but secure. Serafina was already there, making coffee like nothing had happened. She pulled Elena into a fierce hug the moment she walked in. Are you hurt? No, I'm okay. Good. Sit. I'll get you something to eat. Elena sat. Her hands were shaking. Damien was on his phone, his voice low and furious. I want to know who leaked our location. I don't care if it's the middle of the night. Wake him up. No, no one else. Just you. He hung up and turned to Marco. We've got a leak. Inside? Has to be. Only 5 people knew where we were. 6, counting Elena. It's not Elena. How do you know? Because she's the target. Why would she tell them where she is? Marco didn't have an answer for that. Vincent arrived an hour later, grim-faced. Found something. One of the men on our security team, Tommy Reese. He made 3 calls yesterday to a number registered to a law firm. The same firm that represents Mercy General. Damien's jaw tightened. Where's Tommy now? Disappeared. Cleared out his apartment. He's in the wind. Find him. Boss, I said find him. And when you do, bring him to me. Vincent nodded and left. Elena watched Damien pace. He looked more dangerous now than she'd ever seen him, like something feral had been let off its leash. This is my fault, she said. He stopped. What? I should have left when you told me to. I should have Stop. Damien crossed the room and crouched in front of her. This is not your fault, you hear me? None of this is your fault. They came for me. They almost got you killed. They came for you because you're dangerous to them. Because you're the one person who can prove what they did. That makes you valuable. That makes you worth protecting. I don't feel valuable. I feel like a liability. You're not. Damien took her hands. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You lost everything and kept fighting. You stood up to people who had all the power and refused to back down. That's not a liability. That's a weapon. Elena's eyes burned. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let it stop you. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Damien squeezed her hands once, then stood. We're moving up the timeline. The hearing happens in 3 days. 3 days, Marco said. That's not enough time to... It has to be. They know where Elena is now. Every minute we wait gives them another chance to take her out. So we hit them first, hit them hard, and we don't stop until it's done. And if we're not ready, then we get ready. The next 72 hours were brutal. They worked around the clock, building the case, gathering witnesses, preparing testimony. Elena went over her statement so many times the words stopped making sense. Damien's lawyers drafted subpoenas. Marco tracked down Sophia's medical records. Vincent found 2 more hospital employees willing to talk. And through it all, Elena felt the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on her. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about survival. If they failed, if the hearing didn't work, the people who'd tried to kill her would try again. And next time, they might succeed. On the second night, Elena woke to find Damien sitting in the chair by her bed, watching her. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Thinking." "About what?" "About how this ends." Elena sat up. "And?" "I don't know. Best case, we win. We expose everyone involved, clear your name, get justice for Sophia. You get your life back. And worst case, you die. I die. Everyone we care about becomes a target. That's cheerful." "You asked." Elena pulled her knees to her chest. "What happens after, if we win?" "I don't know." "Will I stay here? With you?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. "Do you want to?" "I don't know. Maybe. Is that crazy?" "Probably." "You're not helping." He stood and moved to sit on the edge of her bed. "My life isn't normal, Elena. It's not safe. The people I deal with, the things I do. It's not something you just walk into. I'm already in it. This is temporary. Once the hearing's over..." "What? I go back to my old life?" "There is no old life. It's gone. They took it from me." She met his eyes. "The only thing I have left is this. You. Your mother. The people in that war room who look at me like I'm part of the team. That's my life now." "Elena, I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking for forever. I'm just asking if there's room for me here. After." Damien reached out and cupped her face. "There's room. There's always been room." She kissed him. He kissed her back, slow and deep and full of all the things neither of them knew how to say. When they broke apart, Damien rested his forehead against hers. 3 days, he murmured. 3 days, she agreed. On the morning of the hearing, Elena stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized herself. She wore a simple black dress, professional, understated, appropriate for court. Her hair was pulled back. Her makeup was minimal. She looked like the nurse she used to be. The one who'd cared about rules and protocol and doing things the right way. But inside she felt different, harder, sharper, ready. Damien appeared in the doorway. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be." "They're going to try to break you in there, attack your credibility, make you look unstable." "I know. Don't let them. Just tell the truth. That's all we need." Elena turned to face him. "What if the truth isn't enough?" "It will be, because this time you're not alone." They drove to the courthouse in silence. The hearing was technically a deposition, not a trial, a fact-finding session ordered by the state medical board after Damien's lawyers had filed enough motions to force their hand. But it would be public, recorded. And most importantly, it would be full of people who couldn't walk away. Dr. Hoffman would be there. Dr. Chen would be there. The board members, the lawyers, the witnesses, everyone who'd helped bury the truth. And they'd all have to answer questions. The courthouse was already packed when they arrived. Reporters lined the steps. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted Elena's name. Damien's hand was on her back, steady and warm. "Ignore them." They pushed through the crowd and into the building. Security was tight. Metal detectors, ID checks, armed guards. Elena's pulse hammered as they made their way to the hearing room. Marco was already there, sitting in the front row with Serafina. They both stood when Elena entered. "You've got this," Marco said. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. The room filled quickly. Lawyers, hospital administrators, reporters. And then, finally, Dr. Hoffman himself. He looked older than Elena remembered. Gray at the temples, lines around his mouth. But his eyes were the same, cold and dismissive. He saw Elena and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Elena felt Damien tense beside her. "Don't," she murmured. "Not yet." The hearing began. The panel consisted of 3 medical board members, 2 men and a woman, all wearing expressions that suggested they'd rather be anywhere else. The lead examiner, a stern-faced man named Dr. Gerald Whitmore, opened the proceedings with a statement about transparency and accountability that sounded rehearsed. Elena barely heard it. She was watching Dr. Hoffman's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in an expensive suit who kept glancing at her notes and whispering to her client. "Ms. Cross," Dr. Whitmore said, pulling Elena's attention back, "you're here voluntarily today to provide testimony regarding the death of Sophia Moretti. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you understand that your testimony will be recorded and made part of the public record?" "I understand." "Good. Let's begin." He shuffled his papers. "On the evening of March 14th, you were the attending nurse for Sophia Moretti's appendectomy. Can you walk us through what happened?" Elena took a breath. This was it. Sophia came in around 6 p.m. with abdominal pain, standard presentation for appendicitis. We ran labs, confirmed the diagnosis, and scheduled her for surgery that night. She was scared, 14 years old, first surgery, so I stayed with her, talked to her, held her hand. And the surgical team? Dr. Richard Hoffman was the primary surgeon. Dr. Patricia Chen was supervising. There was an anesthesiologist, a surgical resident, and 2 other nurses. What time did the surgery begin? 9:45 p.m. And what was Dr. Hoffman's condition when he arrived? Hoffman's lawyer stood. Objection. Leading question. "I haven't asked anything leading," Dr. Whitmore said mildly. "I'm asking Ms. Cross to describe what she observed." The lawyer sat back down, jaw tight. Elena continued. Dr. Hoffman arrived late. He was unsteady on his feet. His speech was slurred. He smelled like alcohol. Did anyone else notice this? Everyone noticed, but no one said anything. Why not? Because Dr. Hoffman is powerful. He has friends on the board. People who cross him tend to lose their jobs. Hoffman's lawyer shot to her feet again. "This is speculation and character assassination. Ms. Cross has no evidence." "I have evidence," Elena cut in. She looked directly at Hoffman. "I have the original surgical notes, the ones that show you punctured the inferior mesenteric artery at 9:53 p.m., the ones that show you tried to repair it and failed, the ones that show Sophia bled out while you were too drunk to realize what you'd done." The room erupted. Reporters started shouting questions. Hoffman's face went red. His lawyer was yelling about procedure and evidence chains. Dr. Whitmore was banging his gavel, calling for order. Damien's lawyer stood calmly and held up a folder. "We have copies for the panel, authenticated by an independent medical examiner, along with testimony from the surgical resident who was present that night." Dr. Whitmore took the folder. His face paled as he read. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. "That's not relevant," Damien's lawyer said. "What's relevant is that these documents prove Miss Cross has been telling the truth from the beginning, and that Mercy General Hospital engaged in a systematic cover-up to protect Dr. Hoffman." Hoffman lunged to his feet. "This is a setup. Those documents are fabricated." "Then you won't mind submitting to a blood alcohol test right now," Damien's lawyer said smoothly. "Since you claim you weren't drinking that night, your current tolerance levels should prove it." Hoffman's lawyer grabbed his arm and pulled him back down, whispering furiously. Dr. Whitmore set the folder down. "We'll take a 15-minute recess while the panel reviews this evidence." Everyone stood. Elena felt her legs shaking. Damien was beside her instantly. "You did good." "I almost lost it." "No, you didn't. You were perfect." Marco appeared, his eyes bright with something Elena hadn't seen before. Hope? Maybe? Or vindication? "That bastard's face when you mentioned the surgical notes," he said. "I wish I could have taken a picture." Serafina pulled Elena into a hug. "You're so brave, sweetheart." Elena wasn't sure about brave. She felt like she might throw up. The recess stretched to 30 minutes. Then 45. Elena paced in the hallway while Damien made phone calls and Marco chain-smoked by the window despite the no-smoking signs. Finally, they were called back in. Dr. Whitmore looked like he'd aged 10 years. After reviewing the evidence presented, this panel has determined that the testimony warrants further investigation. We'll be calling additional witnesses. Who? Hoffman's lawyer demanded. Dr. Patricia Chen, for one. The anesthesiologist who was present, the surgical resident, and will be subpoenaing the hospital's complete surgical records for that evening, including any documents that may have been altered or destroyed. Hoffman's lawyer went pale. You can't. We can and we will. This hearing is adjourned until Monday at 9 a.m. Dr. Hoffman, you are not to leave the state. The gavel came down. Elena sagged against Damien. Is it over? Not yet, but we just won the first round. They pushed through the crowd of reporters outside. Questions came from every direction. Elena kept her head down, letting Damien and Marco clear a path. Someone grabbed her arm. She spun, ready to pull away, and found herself face to face with a young woman in scrubs. The woman's eyes were red-rimmed, her grip desperate. I was there, the woman said quickly. That night, I'm one of the nurses who was in the OR with Sophia. I'm so sorry. I should have said something. I should have backed you up, but I was scared and it's okay, Elena said, even though it wasn't. No, it's not. I let them destroy you because I was a coward. Tears spilled down the woman's cheeks. But I'm ready to testify now, if you need me, if it helps. Elena squeezed her arm. What's your name? Sarah Chen. Elena's eyes widened. Chen, are you? Dr. Chen's daughter. Yeah. Sarah's laugh was bitter. She paid for my nursing degree with the money she got for covering up that little girl's death. So I owe her nothing. And I owe you everything. Damien stepped closer. Can you be in court Monday morning? I'll be there. She disappeared into the crowd before Elena could say anything else. That was unexpected, Marco said. Families fall apart when the pressure's on, Damien replied. Dr. Chen's about to learn that the hard way. They drove back to the safe house in Queens. Elena felt wrung out, exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. She'd spent months carrying the weight of what happened to Sophia alone. And now, finally, people were starting to listen. But it wasn't over yet. That night, Damien's phone rang at 2 a.m. Elena heard him answer in the next room, his voice sharp and alert despite the hour. She got up and found him in the kitchen, still on the call, his expression dark. When? He said. How bad? All right, keep me updated. He hung up and saw Elena. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? The surgical resident who was going to testify? The one who admitted Hoffman was drunk? He was in a car accident 2 hours ago. Elena's blood went cold. Is he alive? Barely. He's in the ICU. Won't be testifying Monday. That's not a coincidence. No, it's not. They're eliminating witnesses. Looks that way. Damien rubbed his face. We need to move the others somewhere safe. Sarah Chen, the anesthesiologist, anyone else who's agreed to talk. How do we do that without tipping them off? Carefully. He made more calls. By sunrise, Vincent had Sarah Chen in protective custody at a location even Elena didn't know. The anesthesiologist was being moved to a hotel under a false name. 2 other hospital employees who'd reached out were being quietly relocated. It felt like preparing for war, which Elena supposed it was. Serafina made breakfast, eggs and toast and coffee strong enough to strip paint. Marco sat at the table, scrolling through news articles on his phone. We're all over the media, he said. Hospital scandal, cover-up exposed, nurse vindicated. Some of these outlets are calling you a hero. Elena snorted. I'm not a hero. You stood up when no one else would. That's the definition of a hero. Heroes don't end up homeless and broken. Heroes end up tested, Serafina corrected gently, and you passed the test. Now you're winning. We haven't won yet, but we will. Serafina set a plate in front of her. Because this time, we're fighting together. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Damien's lawyers worked around the clock, building the case, anticipating every possible defense strategy. Elena reviewed her testimony until she could recite it in her sleep. Marco tracked down every piece of documentation related to Sophia's death and organized it into a timeline that was impossible to refute. On Sunday evening, Elena found herself alone in the safe house's small living room. Everyone else was in meetings or making calls or doing things she wasn't privy to. She sat by the window and watched the city lights flicker in the distance. She thought about Sophia, about the girl who'd squeezed her hand and asked if the surgery would hurt, about the promise Elena had made that everything would be okay. She'd broken that promise. Sophia had died scared and in pain, and no amount of justice would bring her back. But maybe, Elena thought, it would mean something that someone had cared enough to fight. You're thinking too much. Elena turned to find Damien in the doorway. He'd changed into jeans and a t-shirt, his usual armor of expensive suits temporarily abandoned. Can't help it. I know. He came to sit beside her. But you need to rest. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Harder than the last 3 months? Different hard. Elena leaned against him. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders and they sat in comfortable silence. What happens after? Elena asked eventually. After we win? You mean if we win? We're going to win, Damien smiled. When did you become the optimistic one? When I realized I have something to fight for. And what's that? Elena turned to look at him. You. Your family. A life that's mine, instead of something that was taken from me. Damien's expression softened. You know this won't be easy, right? Even after the hearing, the people we're going up against don't just disappear because they lose in court. I know. They'll come after us, after you, and I can protect you, but I can't make you untouchable. I don't want to be untouchable. I just want to be free. Free to do what? I don't know yet. Maybe go back to nursing. Maybe do something completely different. Open that community clinic you and your mom keep talking about. Damien raised an eyebrow. You've been listening to our conversations? Hard not to when you're in the next room. He laughed. Fair point. Would you really help me do that? Open a clinic? If that's what you want. What do you want? Damien was quiet for a long moment. I want Sophia's death to mean something. I want my brother to be able to sleep through the night without seeing his daughter's face. I want my mother to stop crying when she thinks no one's watching. He looked at Elena. And I want you to have the life you deserve, whatever that looks like. That's a lot of wants. Yeah, it is. Elena kissed him. He kissed her back, slow and thorough, until her head was spinning. Stay with me tonight, she murmured against his mouth. Elena, please, I don't want to be alone. He pulled back just far enough to look at her. Whatever he saw in her face made him nod. They went to her room. Damien locked the door and pulled her close, and for the first time in months, Elena felt safe enough to let go. They made love slowly, quietly, with a tenderness that made her chest ache. Afterward, she lay with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? Of losing this. You. Everything we're building. You won't lose me. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. Damien's arms tightened around her. I've lost too many people I love. I'm not losing you too. Elena closed her eyes and tried to believe him. Monday morning arrived too fast. They were back at this courthouse by 8:30. The crowd was even bigger than before. More reporters, more cameras, more people holding signs that read Justice for Sophia and Protect Whistleblowers. Elena felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. Dr. Chen was the first witness called. She walked to the stand looking 10 years older than her personnel photo. Her hands shook as she was sworn in. Dr. Whitmore didn't waste time. Dr. Chen, you were the supervising physician the night Sophia Moretti died, is that correct? Yes. And you were aware that Dr. Hoffman had been drinking before the surgery. Dr. Chen's lawyer stood. My client invokes her Fifth Amendment right. Answer the question, Dr. Chen, Dr. Whitmore said coldly, or be held in contempt. Dr. Chen swallowed hard. Yes, I knew. And you allowed him to operate anyway. She stopped. Started again. I made a mistake. I should have stopped the surgery. But Dr. Hoffman assured me he was fine, and I trusted his judgment. You trusted the judgment of a man who was visibly intoxicated? I didn't think. No, you didn't think. And a 14-year-old girl died because of it. Dr. Whitmore leaned forward. Tell me about the cover-up. Dr. Chen's face crumpled. There was no cover-up. Dr. Chen, we have financial records showing payments made to you, to board members, to hospital administrators. We have testimony from staff members who were pressured to stay silent. We have the original autopsy report that you tried to bury. So I'll ask you again. Tell me about the cover-up. I invoke my Fifth Amendment. Your daughter is testifying next, Damien's lawyer said quietly. Sarah Chen. She's going to tell this panel everything you did. How you threatened her. How you used her nursing career to keep her quiet. How you paid for her education with blood money. Dr. Chen went white. Sarah wouldn't. She already has. She gave us a sworn statement. So you can either cooperate now and maybe salvage some shred of dignity, or you can watch your daughter destroy you on the stand. The silence stretched. Finally, Dr. Chen broke. Dr. Hoffman made a mistake. He severed an artery. Sophia bled out before we could repair it. And yes, he'd been drinking. I knew it. We all knew it. But he's Dr. Richard Hoffman. His family built half this hospital. His father sits on the board of trustees. We couldn't just hold him accountable, Dr. Whitmore finished. Couldn't just tell the truth? It would have destroyed the hospital's reputation. So you destroyed a nurse's life instead. Dr. Chen didn't answer. Sarah Chen's testimony was even more damning. She walked to the stand with her head high and her voice steady, and she laid out every detail of her mother's involvement. The bribes, the threats, the falsified records. She held nothing back. Elena watched Dr. Chen's face crumble as her daughter spoke. She should have felt satisfaction, victory, but all she felt was sad. This was what corruption did. It didn't just hurt its victims, it poisoned everything it touched: families, careers, lives. The anesthesiologist testified next, then a hospital administrator who'd been pressured to sign off on the falsified autopsy, then a board member who'd received payments to vote against investigating Sophia's death. One by one, they all confirmed the same story. Dr. Hoffman had been drunk. He'd made a fatal error, and Mercy General Hospital had covered it up to protect its reputation and its money. By the time the lunch recess was called, the case was airtight. Elena stepped outside for air. Her hands were shaking. Marco followed her. "We're winning," he said. "I know. Sophia's going to get justice. I know." Elena turned to face him. "But it doesn't bring her back." "No, it doesn't." Marco's eyes were wet. "But it means she mattered, that her life and her death meant something, and that's—" His voice broke. "That's all I have left." Elena pulled him into a hug. He held on tight, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. When they pulled apart, Serafina was there, her own face wet with tears. She took her son's hand and squeezed. "She'd be proud of you," Serafina said softly. "Both of you." The afternoon session began with Dr. Hoffman on the stand. He'd lost his swagger. His expensive suit looked rumpled. His face was drawn. Dr. Whitmore showed no mercy. "Dr. Hoffman, how much had you had to drink the night of March 14th? "I had 1 glass of wine with dinner, that's all." "1 glass?" "Yes. We have testimony from 4 different witnesses that you were visibly intoxicated, that you smelled like alcohol, that your hands were shaking." "They're lying." "All of them? Including your own surgical resident?" "He's trying to save his career." "By destroying his own reputation? That doesn't make sense, Dr. Hoffman." Dr. Whitmore held up a document. "This is your credit card statement from that evening. You were at a bar 3 blocks from the hospital from 5:30 to 8:45 p.m. You ordered 6 vodka tonics." Hoffman's lawyer stood. "That statement was obtained without—" "It was subpoenaed legally," Damien's lawyer said, "along with security footage from the bar showing Dr. Hoffman downing those drinks. Would you like us to play it for the panel?" Hoffman's face went red. "I want my lawyer." "Your lawyer is sitting right there," Dr. Whitmore said. "Answer the question. Were you intoxicated when you operated on Sophia Moretti?" Silence. "Dr. Hoffman." "Yes!" Hoffman exploded. "Yes, I'd been drinking, but I've performed hundreds of surgeries after a few drinks and nothing went wrong. This was it was bad luck." The room went dead silent. Elena felt something release in her chest. After all these months, after everything they'd taken from her, Hoffman had finally admitted the truth. Dr. Whitmore's voice was ice. "A 14-year-old girl died because you were too drunk to do your job properly, and you call that bad luck?" That's not what I meant. Get out of my courtroom." "What?" "Get out. You're done. This panel will reconvene tomorrow morning to issue formal findings, but I can tell you right now that your medical license will be permanently revoked, and I'll be recommending criminal charges for negligent homicide." Hoffman's lawyer was pulling at his arm, trying to get him to leave, but Hoffman shook her off and pointed at Elena. "This is her fault," he snarled. "That little bitch couldn't keep her mouth shut. She destroyed my career over one mistake. Damien was on his feet. Marco grabbed his arm, holding him back. Elena stood slowly. She walked to the witness stand, ignoring Hoffman's lawyer trying to block her path. She looked Hoffman in the eye. I didn't destroy your career. You did that yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. She turned and walked out of the courtroom. The crowd outside was cheering. Elena pushed through them in a daze. She made it to the steps before her knees gave out. Damien caught her. I've got you. It's over, she whispered. Yeah, it's over. We won. We won. Elena started crying, not sad tears, not relieved tears, something deeper. Years of pain and fear and anger all releasing at once. Damien held her while she fell apart. Marco and Serafina surrounded them, creating a barrier between Elena and the cameras. Reporters were shouting questions. Cameras were flashing. But for once, Elena didn't care. She'd told the truth. She'd fought back. And she'd won. The formal findings came down the next morning. Dr. Hoffman's medical license was revoked. Dr. Chen resigned in disgrace. 3 hospital board members were removed. The hospital itself faced a criminal investigation for obstruction of justice. And Elena's nursing license was reinstated with a formal apology from the medical board. She stood in Damien's office, holding the letter, and couldn't quite believe it was real. You're a nurse again, Serafina said, beaming. Yeah, I guess I am. So what now? Marco asked. Elena looked at Damien. He was watching her with that quiet intensity that still made her pulse race. Now, Elena said slowly, we build something better. Building something better turned out to be harder than winning in court. The first problem was finding a location. Elena wanted somewhere in Lower Manhattan, accessible, visible, the kind of place people wouldn't be afraid to walk into. But real estate in the city was expensive, and even with Damien's resources, finding the right space took weeks. They finally settled on a former community center in the East Village. The building was old, the plumbing was questionable, and the previous tenants had left it in rough shape. But it had good bones and 3 floors of space they could convert into exam rooms, a pharmacy, and administrative offices. Elena stood in the middle of the gutted first floor, surrounded by dust and debris, and felt something close to peace. You're sure about this? Damien asked. He was leaning against the doorframe, watching her with that careful expression he wore when he was worried but trying not to show it. I'm sure. It's going to take months to get this place operational. Permits, inspections, hiring staff, and that's before we even start seeing patients. I know. And we're going to lose money. A lot of it. Community clinics don't turn profits. I don't care about profits. Damien pushed off the doorframe and came to stand beside her. What do you care about? Elena thought about Sophia, about the night she'd spent freezing outside Port Authority, about every patient she'd ever treated who couldn't afford proper care. I care about making sure people don't fall through the cracks, she said. I care about creating a place where someone's ability to pay doesn't determine whether they live or die. I care about doing something that matters. It matters, Damien said quietly. All of it matters. They hired contractors. Elena threw herself into planning while Damien handled the business side. Negotiations, permits, the endless paperwork that came with opening a medical facility. Serafina became the unofficial project manager, coordinating between construction crews and keeping everyone fed. Marco surprised everyone by taking an interest in the clinic's security systems, designing protocols to protect both patients and staff. It felt like building a family as much as building a clinic. Sarah Chen reached out 3 weeks after the hearing. She'd quit her job at Mercy General and was looking for work. Elena hired her on the spot. You don't have to do this, Sarah said when Elena told her. After everything my mother did, your mother made her choices, you made yours, and you chose to tell the truth even when it cost you everything. That's the kind of nurse I want on my team. Sarah's eyes filled. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This place is going to be chaos for a while. Sarah smiled. I can handle chaos. More staff followed. A physician's assistant who'd been blacklisted for reporting unsafe working conditions at another hospital. A pharmacist who'd lost his license over a paperwork error and spent 2 years fighting to get it back. A receptionist who'd aged out of foster care and was trying to build a life with no family support. They were all broken in some way. all people the system had failed or abandoned, and Elena understood them in a way she couldn't have before her own fall. The clinic started to take shape. The construction crew finished the exam rooms by October. The pharmacy got its license in November. By December, they were ready for a soft opening. Limited hours, walk-in only, no appointments yet. Elena stood outside on opening day, watching the sun rise over the East Village, and felt the weight of what they were about to do. Nervous? Damien asked. He'd insisted on being there for the opening, despite having a dozen other things that demanded his attention. Terrified. Good. Means you care. What if no one comes? They'll come. He was right. By 9 a.m., there were 15 people waiting outside. By noon, they'd seen 30 patients. By the time they closed at 6 p.m., Elena had treated 53 people for everything from flu symptoms to untreated diabetes to infected wounds. She was exhausted. Her feet hurt. Her back ached. And she'd never been happier. "You're glowing," Serafina said that evening over dinner. She'd brought food to the clinic, enough pasta to feed the entire staff twice over. "I'm sweating." "You're glowing," Serafina insisted. "You've got that look people get when they're doing what they were meant to do." Elena glanced at Damien. He was talking to Marco about expanding the security system, but he must have felt her looking because he turned and met her eyes. The way he looked at her made her chest tight, like she was something precious, something worth protecting. She still wasn't used to it. The clinic grew quickly. Word spread through the community. There was a place you could go without insurance, without money, without fear of being turned away. They started seeing 50 patients a day, then 70, then 100. Elena hired more staff. They extended their hours. Sarah took on a leadership role, managing the nursing team with a competence that surprised no one. But success came with complications. 2 months after opening, a man walked into the clinic with a gunshot wound. He was young, maybe 20, and scared out of his mind. The bullet had gone through his shoulder, missing major arteries but leaving him bleeding heavily. "We need to call the police," Sarah said immediately. "No cops," the kid gasped. "Please, they'll arrest me." Elena looked at the wound, looked at the kid's face, saw the desperation there. "Treat him," she said. Sarah stared at her. "Elena, treat him. We'll figure out the rest later." They cleaned and stitched the wound. The kid gave them a fake name and refused to answer questions about how he'd been shot. When he was stable, Elena walked him to the door. "You should go to the police," she said quietly. "Whatever you're involved in, it's not worth your life." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe not, but I know that bullet could have killed you, and the next one might." The kid looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded and disappeared into the night. Damien found out about it 3 hours later. "You treated a gunshot wound and didn't report it?" His voice was carefully controlled, which meant he was furious. He was a kid. He was scared. He was involved in something that got him shot. And now you're involved too. "I'm a nurse. My job is to treat people, not judge them. Your job is also to follow the law. Gunshot wounds have to be reported." "I know that." "Then why didn't you?" Elena met his eyes. "Because he reminded me of Sophia, scared, young, in over his head, and I thought—" She stopped. "I thought if I could help him, maybe it would balance something out." Damien's anger dissolved. He pulled her close. "You can't save everyone, Elena." "I know, but I have to try." The incident should have been a one-time thing, but word got out that the clinic would treat people without asking questions. More patients started showing up with injuries they couldn't explain. Gang members, drug dealers, people on the wrong side of the law who couldn't go to a regular hospital without risking arrest. Elena treated them all. "This is getting dangerous," Marco said one evening. He'd started spending more time at the clinic, ostensibly to check the security systems, but really because he seemed to need something to focus on besides his grief. "These people you're treating, they're connected to some bad groups. If the wrong person finds out, then what? They'll come after us?" "Yeah, they will." "Let them." Elena's jaw set. "I'm not turning away patients because they scare someone." "You should be scared too." "I am, but I'm more scared of becoming the kind of person who looks the other way." Marco studied her. "You're either very brave or very stupid. Can't I be both?" He laughed despite himself. "Yeah, I guess you can." The real trouble came in March, almost a year after Sophia's death. Elena was closing up the clinic late one evening when three men walked in. They weren't patients. They moved wrong. Too purposeful, too coordinated. And they were carrying guns. Sarah saw them first. "Elena." "Get in the back," Elena said quietly. "Lock the door." "I'm not leaving you. Go, now." Sarah ran. Elena heard the lock click just as the men reached the front desk. "We're closed," Elena said, keeping her voice steady. The lead man smiled. He was older than the others, with graying hair and cold eyes. "We're not here for medical care." "Then you need to leave." "We need to talk about the people you've been treating." "I don't discuss my patients. Not even when those patients work for people who'd rather their business stay private?" Elena's pulse hammered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." He leaned on the desk. "Here's how this works. You stop treating certain people, you stop asking questions, and you stay out of business that doesn't concern you. And if I don't? Then accidents happen, fires, break-ins, staff members getting hurt." His smile widened. "Would be a shame if something happened to that pretty nurse who works for you. Sarah, right?" Elena's hands clenched. "Get out! We're just trying to help you understand." "I said get out!" The man's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake." "It won't be my first." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded to the other two men, and they walked out. Elena waited until they were gone before her legs gave out. She sank into a chair, shaking. Sarah emerged from the back room, her face pale. "Who were they?" "I don't know, but we need to call Damien." Damien arrived 20 minutes later with Vincent and four other men Elena didn't recognize. He went through the clinic like a storm, checking every room, every window, every lock. "Tell me exactly what they said," he demanded. Elena repeated the conversation. With every word, Damien's expression got darker. "They threatened Sarah," he said flatly. "Yes, and you. That doesn't matter." "Like hell it doesn't." He turned to Vincent. "I want to know who they are by morning, and I want them to understand that touching anyone connected to this clinic is a death sentence." "Damien?" Elena started. "No. Don't try to talk me out of this. You think you can just treat anyone who walks through that door without consequences? You think the people running this city are going to let you operate outside their control? I'm a nurse. I'm not operating outside anyone's control. You're treating gang members and drug dealers without reporting them. You're creating a safe zone where people can get patched up and go right back to whatever illegal activity put them there in the first place. That makes you a liability. So what do you want me to do? Turn away people who need help? I want you to be smart about this. I want you to have security. I want you to understand that the work you're doing, as noble as it is, makes you a target." Elena stood. "I knew the risks when I opened this place." "Did you? Because from where I'm standing, you walked into this with your eyes closed." "My eyes are wide open. I see exactly what I'm doing, and I'm not stopping." They stared at each other. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Finally, Damien exhaled. "Fine. Then we do this my way. 24-hour security, armed guards, background checks on every new patient. And if anyone threatens you or your staff again, you tell me immediately." "Damien, that's the deal, Elena. Take it or I shut this place down myself." Elena wanted to argue, but she saw the fear beneath his anger. He'd already lost Sophia. He couldn't lose someone else he cared about. "Okay," she said quietly. "Your way." The security helped. The threat stopped. But the damage was done. Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she'd brought danger to the people she'd promised to protect. She found Marco smoking outside the clinic one evening. He'd been coming by more often, helping with administrative work, talking to patients. He seemed lighter than he had in months. "You okay?" he asked. Elena sat beside him. "I don't know." "That's honest. I keep thinking about what those men said, about how treating certain patients makes us a target. And I wonder if I'm being selfish, if my need to help everyone is putting my staff at risk." Marco took a drag of his cigarette. "You want my opinion?" "Always. You're not being selfish, you're being human. You see people suffering and you want to fix it. That's not a flaw. That's what makes you good at what you do." "But what if someone gets hurt because of me? What if someone lives because of you?" Marco met her eyes. "You treated that kid with the gunshot wound. The one Damien was so pissed about. He came back last week. Did you know that? Elena's breath caught. What? He came back, wanted to thank you, said you were the first person in years who treated him like he was worth saving. He's trying to get out of the gang now, enrolled in a GED program. I didn't know, because you don't keep track of the lives you save. You just save them and move on to the next person. Marco's voice was rough. My daughter died because people like you are too rare, because most medical professionals care more about covering their asses than doing what's right. So no, Elena, you're not being selfish. You're being exactly what this city needs. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. The clinic's first anniversary came in December. They'd treated over 15,000 patients. They'd expanded to include mental health services and addiction counseling. They'd hired a full-time social worker to help patients navigate housing and employment resources. Serafina insisted on throwing a party. She took over the clinic after hours, decorating with lights and bringing enough food to feed half the East Village. Staff members brought their families. Former patients showed up to say thank you. Even Sarah's mother appeared, sober and clear-eyed, to apologize to her daughter. Elena watched it all from the corner, overwhelmed. Damien found her there. Why are you hiding? I'm not hiding. I'm observing. You're terrible at parties. I know. She looked at him. This is all because of you. No, this is because of you. You funded it. You fought for it. You protected it. I wrote some checks and made some calls. You did everything else. He took her hand. This clinic exists because you refused to give up, because you looked at everything the world took from you and decided to build something better instead of something bitter. That's not me. That's all you. Elena leaned against him. I couldn't have done it without you. Maybe, but you would have found a way. Serafina appeared with 2 glasses of wine. Stop being antisocial and join the party. We're coming, Damien said. But before they could move, Marco stood and clinked his glass. The room went quiet. I want to say something, Marco said. His voice was steady, but his eyes were bright. A year ago, I was drowning. My daughter died. My marriage fell apart. I couldn't see a way forward. And then Elena opened this clinic in Sophia's name, and suddenly I had something to care about again. Something that mattered. He looked at Elena. You gave me purpose when I had none. You gave this community a place where people matter more than money, and you gave my daughter's death meaning. His voice broke. So thank you. For everything. The room erupted in applause. Elena's face was wet, but she was smiling. Damien squeezed her hand. Told you. The party went late into the night. When everyone finally left, Elena and Damien were the last ones in the clinic. They walked through the empty rooms, turning off lights, straightening chairs. You built something good here, Damien said. We built something good here. You think Sophia would approve? I think she'd love it. They stood in the reception area, surrounded by photos of patients and thank you cards and children's drawings. The clinic had become more than Elena had dreamed. It had become a community. I love you, Damien said suddenly. Elena turned to stare at him. What? I love you. I've loved you since the night you yelled at me for calling you stubborn. Maybe before that? I don't know. But I know I love you, and I know I want to spend the rest of my life watching you save people who everyone else has given up on. Elena couldn't breathe. Damien, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Stop talking. She kissed him. He kissed her back, deep and sure and full of promise. When they broke apart, Elena was crying again. I love you too. Even though you're bossy and overprotective and you never listen when I tell you to stay out of things. I listen, I just don't agree. That's the same thing as not listening. No, it's not, Elena laughed. We're going to fight about this forever, aren't we? Probably. Good. They locked up the clinic and walked out into the cold December night. The city stretched around them, full of noise and light and endless possibility. What now? Damien asked. Elena thought about the question, about everything they'd been through, about Sophia and the hearing and the clinic and the life they'd built from the ashes of everything they'd lost. Now we keep going, she said. We keep fighting, we keep building, we keep trying to make things better even when it's hard. That's not much of a plan. It's the only plan that matters. Damien pulled her close. Then let's do it. They walked home through the city that had broken them both. But they weren't broken anymore. They were scarred, maybe, changed, but also stronger, together. And that, Elena thought, was enough. The truth was, there were no perfect endings. The hospital that had destroyed her career still stood. Dr. Hoffman was facing criminal charges, but his family's lawyers were fighting it, and the case would drag on for years. The system that had allowed Sophia to die was still largely intact, still protecting the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. But Elena had learned something important over the past year. She'd learned that you didn't have to fix everything to make a difference. You didn't have to tear down the whole broken system to help the people trapped inside it. Sometimes doing the right thing meant building something small and imperfect and fighting like hell to keep it alive. It meant showing up every day, even when you were exhausted, even when you were scared, even when the odds were stacked against you. It meant refusing to let the world make you cruel. Elena thought about that a lot as the clinic grew. She thought about it when she treated patients who couldn't pay, when she hired staff members other hospitals had rejected, when she sat with people in their worst moments and reminded them they weren't alone. She'd lost everything once: her career, her home, her dignity. She'd sat on a frozen street corner and wondered if survival was even worth the effort. And then a dangerous man with kind eyes had stopped in front of her and offered her a coat. And somehow, impossibly, that one moment of mercy had changed both their lives. People asked Elena sometimes what she'd learned from everything that happened. From Sophia's death, and the hearing, and the clinic, and the fight, to build something better in a world that seemed designed to tear good things down. Her answer was always the same. She'd learned that strength wasn't about being unbreakable. It was about breaking and choosing to put yourself back together anyway. It was about looking at the worst parts of yourself and the world and deciding that neither one was beyond redemption. She'd learned that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose scars fit with yours. Someone who'd stand beside you in the mess and chaos and help you fight for something better. And she'd learned that justice wasn't a destination. It was a practice. Something you chose over and over, even when it cost you everything, even when no one was watching, even when the victories were small and the losses were devastating. Sophia Moretti had deserved better than the system that killed her. She deserved doctors who cared more about saving her life than protecting their reputations. She deserved a world where telling the truth didn't destroy the people brave enough to do it. Elena couldn't give Sophia that world. But she could build the next best thing, a place where vulnerable people were treated with dignity, where mistakes were acknowledged instead of buried, where caring about your patients mattered more than protecting the institution. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. And in a world that tried so hard to break people like Elena, people who cared too much, who fought too hard, who refused to look away when it would be easier, something was everything. She thought about that on the clinic's second anniversary, thought about it while treating a young mother who couldn't afford prenatal care, while talking down a teenager who'd overdosed, while holding the hand of an elderly man who was dying and had no one else to sit with him. This was what healing looked like. Not clean, not easy, not perfect. Just human beings trying to take care of each other in a world that made it harder than it should be. Damien found her after her shift ended. He'd started doing that more often, showing up at the clinic, helping where he could, learning the names of regular patients. His world and Elena's world had merged in ways neither of them had expected. "Long day?" he asked. "They're all long days. You love it." "I do." They walked home together through the city they'd both been born in, the city that had destroyed them and rebuilt them, the city that was simultaneously the worst and best place Elena had ever known. "You ever think about leaving?" Elena asked. "Going somewhere easier?" "Every day?" "But you stay." "Yeah, I stay." Damien glanced at her. "Because this is where you are, and you're not leaving." "No, I'm not." "Then neither am I." It was that simple, that complicated. They'd built a life together in the ruins of their old lives. A life that included a clinic and a chosen family, and a love that was fierce and messy and absolutely real. It wasn't the life Elena had planned. It wasn't the life Damien had expected, but it was theirs. And it was enough, more than enough. That night, Elena stood in the apartment she shared with Damien and looked out at the city lights. She thought about the girl she'd been a year and a half ago, broken, homeless, certain her life was over. She thought about everything she'd survived, everything she'd fought for, everyone she'd lost and found and learned to love along the way. And she thought about Sophia, about the promise she'd made to a scared 14-year-old girl, about the price she'd paid to keep that promise. In the end, Elena had learned the hardest truth of all. Some promises couldn't be kept. Some people couldn't be saved. Some wrongs couldn't be made right. But you kept trying anyway. You fought anyway. You showed up every single day and you did the work, even when it broke your heart, even when it cost you everything you had. Because the alternative, giving up, walking away, letting the world win, was worse than any price you could pay. Elena had lost everything for standing up for what was right, and she'd do it again in a heartbeat. That was what it meant to be human, to care when it was easier not to fight when the odds were impossible, to build when it would have been simpler to let everything burn. Damien came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. Nothing." Elena leaned back against him. "I was just thinking that I'm glad I ended up here, with you, even though the path was hell." "Yeah?" "Yeah. Me too." They stood there together, watching the city that had broken them both, watching the lights from the clinic Elena had built, glowing warm in the darkness. And Elena thought about Sophia one more time, about the girl who'd died too young, about the life she should have had, about all the people who'd failed her and the one nurse who hadn't. Elena couldn't bring Sophia back. She couldn't undo the past. She couldn't fix a broken system with a single clinic. But she could make sure Sophia's death meant something. She could make sure that other kids like Sophia had somewhere to go when the system failed them. She could fight to make sure telling the truth didn't destroy the people brave enough to do it. It wasn't a perfect ending. Real life never gave you those. But it was an honest one, a true one. An ending that acknowledged the cost of doing the right thing while insisting it was worth paying anyway. And in the end, Elena thought, maybe that was the only kind of ending that mattered, the kind where you survived, where you fought back, where you refused to let the world make you cruel or small or silent, the kind where love was complicated and justice was imperfect and healing was messy and slow, the kind where you built something good from the wreckage and called it enough. Because sometimes enough was everything.